Failure Guy. Welcome to the podcast. On today's episode of the Failure Guy podcast, my guest is Glenn Jones. Glenn, thank you for joining us, and welcome to the conversation.
I'm glad to be here, Cornell. Thank you for having me.
You're quite welcome. Thank you so much for joining us here on the podcast today. And as I like to do with my guests, especially guests that I'm just meeting, and for everyone out there in podcast land, I know a little bit about you, but of course they're just meeting you for the first time. So take a little bit of time and introduce yourself to the folks out here listening to the podcast.
Thank you. Well, I'm a serial entrepreneur. I own Glenn Jones Insurance Agency. I own Insure Financial Group, life insurance agency. The first one is a PNC agency. I own Glenn Jones Karis Karat U-Haul. I'm a U-Haul dealer that we rent U-Haul trucks and trailers. And I'm a propane gas dispenser. So we dispense propane. And I'm a landlord.
Oh. That's quite a bit. That's quite a bit of stuff there. You're a busy guy. Too bad you're not too ambitious.
Exactly. Go ahead.
So, you say that you're a serial entrepreneur. So let's start right there. What is it about the entrepreneurial experience that has you get into it not once, not twice, but several times, each of which I'm sure is quite challenging?
Yes, as a serial entrepreneur, you're looking to create what we call different types of income. We grew up in life learning one aspect of financial success is to earn income and retirement income. So you need diversified income streams or several different revenue streams to create what we call passive income and residual income. What am I screaming? Passive income and residual income is money that's being paid to you regardless whether you're working or not. And so if your earned income from your job is eliminated, you're not experiencing an economic shock, shutdown, and setback of destruction because you no longer have an income. So with your other residual and passive income, you still have the income to maintain your credit, maintain your income level to pay your expenses and your bills, and continue to yield profit so you can expand your empire.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for that. And this raises, we've had conversations before now, of course, this is not the first time we're talking. And as I shared in our conversation, when I decided to when I was compelled to go independent in 2010, and I announced to friends of mine and colleagues of mine that I'd known for years that I was going to be working for myself, all of them said the same ridiculous thing. It's like, oh, you're going to work for yourself? That means that you can take a vacation anytime you want to. And as I explained to them, it's like, no. That means I don't have a vacation because at that point I did not have, nor did I have a grasp of the notion of passive streams of income. So no work, no reward. If I didn't go out there and carry my little red wagon and hang out my shingle, there was no money coming in. So how they thought I was going to take a vacation, a vacation comes because that salary is coming in. Still not a passive stream of income, but passively it's there for those week or two that we take that vacation because we're still getting paid. Now, you're talking about how someone working entirely for themselves can have a system, a mechanism, a method that money's coming in, like they say, making money while you sleep. So say a little bit more about that.
Well, I'm glad you asked that question because the reality is through education, and you and I have talked offline about the paradigm of thinking through education. We're designed by education to get a diploma, to get a degree, to get a job, to stay employed and retire. And yet the wealthiest people in America are not doing it that way to get the level of wealth. And so the mindset of most Americans are to do just that. And so when they're challenged with an opportunity, when their job quit them or they quit the job, where they're backed up and they're like, I don't know what I'm going to do. And I've had that mindset from being terminated. When you talk about the failure, I got terminated from U-Haul as an area field manager, which gave me an opportunity to think differently, to take a different perspective, which started my journey. And so in that paradigm, you begin to shift out of it to realize that there are different ways that the people who are really being holistically successful are creating revenue and income generation. And so pulling people out of that mindset that if you don't work today, you don't get paid. I think you made this comment and we were talking about it. Henry Ford, who owned the Ford Motor Company, was challenged with his attorney. And the attorney called him quite stupid. And he said, well, I wouldn't say that I'm quite stupid because you do 100% of your work. And if you get sick, hurt, or injured, or shut down, you have only an income, and now you don't have income after a certain period of time. He said, if I get hurt, sick, or injured, I got 99 other people doing your job and more, and I'm still getting the same income. It's almost as I never stopped working. And so that right there sparked a particular perspective and a paradigm of how I think, and that we need to look at things with a different perspective.
Right. Actually, believe it or not, Glenn, that was you who dropped that bit of knowledge on me in our previous conversation. But
Okay.
you were so right. And the CEO mentality, the people who are at the top of the game, at the sitting in the C-suite, the concept is never for them to simply have to show up and punch a clock. In fact, I remember in a corporate job when I was working IT at Payne Weber during the late 90s, there was a vice president of a particular unit that I took care of the technology for, and he could take a week off, at regular, not summer or whatever, just whenever. The thing I found ironic also was that the office would run completely smoothly. He'd take a week off, you would know he wasn't even around until Wednesday. But let his executive secretary take half a day off. It was sheer and utter chaos. Now, he could
Yes.
take that payoff, and he probably had stock options, he probably had dividends coming in. But when you look at it in terms of the task to the productivity, who was really doing the work?
Exactly. And so we've only learned to be the employee. And so right now, everyone is excited about their children getting a job with said corporation. They're ecstatic about
Mm,
their children getting a degree with an Ivy League company to get a great job with a corporation. That's as far as the thinking is. That's the platform. And that's like set in stone for 99% of children. And that's an catastrophe. That's what when we were talking about this in 2008 when the markets crashed, unemployment for African American was as high as like 15 to 18%. For white American, it was up to like 10%, 12%. And when they got the unemployment rate down to 4%, that was for white Americans. Black Americans was still at about 10 to 12%. So what happened there? What's the economic difference in the spread? The spread is that the companies who hire people hire greater percentage of white Americans, and they first fire black Americans, and then the last hire black Americans. So if you don't own your job, who's going to fire you? Like your awakening, such as my awakening, is in your entrepreneurship. Who's going to fire you and when? Not you, not ever. So now you've eliminated that.
right, right.
Back back to a point that you said earlier, where they think that you can take time off and take a vacation when you want to. No, in the beginning grind of first 5 7 years to break even, you're putting in where you normally put in 40 hours and go home. You putting in 67 and maybe even 80 hours in your own business, but that's
Yes,
okay. That's okay because everything that you're profiting and making is going to you. Hello,
right.
breaker, breaker, come on,
Yes,
and that
yes.
and that's a difference. You own the outcomes of every decision that you make, and so every decision that you make plays a role of how profitable you're going to be.
Yes, yes. I mean, like I like to say to people, I work hard and I don't make as much money as I did when I worked at corporate America. But every dollar and dime that I make, and it's all mine. I take all the risks and I yield all the reward. Now, you were talking about education, the educational paradigm that we're sort of indoctrinated and enculturated in. And during our previous conversation before the podcast, we were talking about, and I mentioned the General Education Board. And I just wanted to read a little bit here. The General Education Board was founded by John D. Rockefeller, one of the first billionaires in this country, and this was in the early 1900s. It was in 1902 that the General Education Board was created, and it says now ostensibly the putative reason, the surface reason of why this was, it was to promote farming, to establish public high schools in the South, and to promote programs for African Americans. Now, the question here is, why was so much funding put into schooling? What was Rockefeller's motivation? Was he just being benevolent? Was he being a benefactor and a philanthropist? And it says, Rockefeller said, I don't want a nation of thinkers. I want a nation of workers. And here's a quote from Frederick T. Gates, one of the members of the General Education Board, the GEB. And remember, this is in the first decade of the 1900s. This is more than 115 years ago. In our dreams, we have limitless resources, and the people yield themselves with perfect docility to our molding hand. We shall not search for embryo great artists, painters, musicians, nor lawyers, doctors, preachers, politicians, statesmen, of whom we have ample supply, we the billionaire class. The task we set before ourselves is very simple as well as a very beautiful one, to train these people as we find them to a perfectly ideal life just where they are. So the point of this education was to train them to be docile drones of the billionaire class. And that was stated, and they said this out loud.
What year was that, they said?
That was in 1902.
1902. And that programming, as you said, is a programming.
Yes,
yes. That programming, that key word, TV program, educational program, has made us docile in our thinking, and we don't think outside of the box. We don't think. I remember when getting termination, as I think you would call a termination a part of a failure.
Oh, yes, brother.
It was, I guess, if you're looking at it from that perspective, failure out of that system, which turned to be a good thing.
Yes.
But that programming is the way that when you're terminated, people look at you with a question mark. What are you going to do now?
Yes, yes.
Everything. You're no longer in this great fold. When I worked for Disney World, I didn't get terminated. I decided to leave there. But the same feeling, well, who are you going to work for? Disney is all there is. All is lost. That's the mentality. All is lost if you don't work for Disney.
Yes, I mean, come on. That's the top of the mountain. You grab the brass ring, son. We're talking. Where are you going to go? It's only downhill from here.
Yes. If you work for Walmart as a general manager, assistant manager, excuse me, you're leaving Walmart, all is lost. All hope is gone.
Yes,
You can't make it. Same with when it came to U-Haul. All is lost after being there 10 years. All was lost.
Oh, especially after a decade of experience. And then they're also looking at you as like, what did you do?
Yes, what did I do? Hey, my story was with U-Haul as an area field manager. I was, my job was, and it's apropos in how it all plays into my serial entrepreneurship, because my assignment there was to go and establish satellite independent U-Haul dealers, train them how to make profit into it, and all those things, and so that over the years, their dealership would increase and multiply and make a great bit of revenue. So it was cultivating me to do what I'm doing now.
Right.
But the thing was, it also required me to repair equipment and trailers and things like that. And if you've not met me yet physically to see me, that I have a impaired left arm, meaning when I was 4 years old, I was hit by an 18-wheeler truck.
Oh my God.
That I survived. I called myself a Black Adam in secret. And but my left arm, I can't use it because of the nerve system, and it didn't function well afterwards. So everything I do have to count. So I'm like, you know, when you put me in that position, I was not going to be the very best mechanic. And so I wasn't doing the level of mechanical repairs. And so after a while, after becoming almost number one in U-Haul, or became number one area field manager out of 1,200 in the company, they found the reason to terminate me because of lack of. And I can't argue with that. I wasn't doing it. And really, that wasn't my thing to really do a lot of repairs. So, yeah, it was a legitimate firing, but it was a termination. And I'm
Hmm.
like, oh,
Let's
that
say
hurt.
let's say it was a plausible excuse because if you elevated yourself up to being number one with one arm, come on now. All these other guys, they got both hands and they can't keep up with me. So y'all just looking for an excuse to let me go.
Well, I didn't want to say that, but you, using your intellectual genius, you figured it out.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. And like myself and like a lot of people, and I think a lot of people who are the audience of the Failure Guy podcast, you are an accidental entrepreneur. It's not like you were sitting there saying, you know what I want to do? I want to go out and launch my own business. You were perfectly happy working a career. And then
No,
when you, okay,
that's incorrect.
okay, I
Um,
stand corrected.
in college at Bethune-Cookman, I started selling T-shirts and towels. I've always aspired to own my own business, and part of my
Ah,
part of my failure story when I came out of college and working with had left Disney and started working for Walmart. I walked off the job to do my own T-shirt business.
so
That
you left Disney
yes,
to
and
do a
started working.
t-shirt business. And how many
No,
people that knew you thought you had lost your mind?
I left Disney to work for Walmart,
Oh, okay, okay. I'll try to
and
keep up.
from Walmart, I walked off a Walmart job because I started my own T-shirt business.
Okay, right. And then, so you were Disney, even then a prestigious company. I don't know if that was when they owned everything in Marvel and all this kind of stuff, but still Disney was Disney was Disney was always Disney. And then Walmart, the number one big box retail organization pretty much in the world, definitely in North America. And then so
Yes,
you left that to start a t-shirt business. And
T-shirt business.
and I'm sure a
And
lot of
so
people were looking like you was like, "Boy, have
you
you
crazy. You you left the best in the industry of retail, the best in the industry for um, whatever Disney does,
media?" Yeah.
media, and now you doing T-shirts, and that failed due to the fact that I didn't have enough wisdom, that I didn't have the investment to start the
Ah.
business. So as I was profiting, I had to live out of my investment, and so it was killing me.
So you weren't
And
able
so,
to turn it back into the business and invest
right.
and grow, right?
And so then I started working for U-Haul and exceeded into being a general manager and exceeded into being an area field manager. And then they terminated me. And it's like, okay, at this point, I got to do something different.
Right, right. And the thing that the thought that literally just came to mind as you were talking about your experiences with the t-shirt business is that employees, and remember, a CEO, if they did not found the business, is just an employee, a glorified employee, a well-compensated employee, but they're still an employee. You know,
Yes.
employees tend to learn from success. Entrepreneurs tend to learn most from failure.
Hello, breaker, breaker. Come on. I got your 411 right there. You're on, and that's old terminology. I love it. So back in the days, the CB. But the
Hey, come on,
reality,
if you know, you know, as the kids like to say.
yeah, but you're exactly right. That was a graduation point to enter into entrepreneurship. And what I've taken from each of those companies was apropos for being a serial entrepreneur, to how to manage my business, how to manage the employees, how to train, how to manage my property and make sure everything's on the point, insurances, licenses, everything that you need to stay up, how to go and find new business and expand and increase and multiply. Because yes, initially in your business, you're not taking much profit, your income will be lower, but the back end of it is the sweet spot where whatever you've done now increases and multiplying, you're employing people and you're generating, enough revenue that you're generating millions. So now you're rewarding yourself much handsomely. But you never would have known to think it out, to stick through it,
Right,
had you into the training with each of these corporations
right,
that were.
exactly, exactly. And as contradictory as it may seem, look, there's a lot of people who are sitting in the C-suites and corporations all over the world that went to Wharton or Harvard Business School or wherever, and they got their MBAs, Master of Business Administration, although I don't know what sitting in a classroom makes you a master of anything. But these are the ones who have precipitated some of the greatest financial busts and boom bust bubble cycles in the world because they only learned the theory. They're not work boots on the ground. They're not out there getting it done. They know what they've been taught by somebody who, if they're sitting in front of a classroom, they haven't been in the business world for years or decades. So the knowledge that they're talking about is a generation removed from reality. They're always behind the trends, and they're playing it safe because when they're an employee of somebody else's company, they're risk averse. Naturally and understandably, but they are. Now, when we get out here and we become entrepreneurs, we got to do what we got to do. And sometimes we just got to take that shot because that's the only shot that's available. And a lot of times we will fail several times, but we don't have the option. That's the only thing we've got coming in. So we've just got to pick ourselves up, shake the dust off, and try again and try again and try again. And as I say here in the Failure Guy podcast, failure is an acronym that expands to first attempts in learning using real experience. And those of us who will fail, we have come up because we've failed enough times to know, what is it that Thomas Edison said? Oh, I haven't failed 1,000 times. I learned 997 ways not to do it.
Exactly, on steroids. That's the truth. The security and safety of employment and income, salaries and stuff will always be a great hindrance, because whether you put in quality work, average work, or exceptional work, you still have a paycheck.
Yes.
Or you put in minimal work for a while, you still have a paycheck. So you're kind of locked in with that safety and security behind that. And then it gets into the part where the benefits kick in too, which is another rip off in doing this here, in which we can talk about that later. But what that does is that's failure happening, that where the same genius of the MBA, the same genius of the PhD, where technically in Florida, a PhD person in our school system earns $60,000, $70,000, $80,000. Okay, that's great, and I say I salute them in that security position. But in reality, the number one industry that has produced the most income is sales and communication.
Yes. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. I say this quite often. In the corporate world, the people who make the most money are the salespeople, because they're the ones who generate the revenue that pays everybody's salary.
Exactly. So here's the conditioning, though. It is even in the Bible that makes it so plain. I think a fool can't misunderstand it. Whereas you got to earn salary, and you earn that $60,000 to $80,000 a year. Where in a sale, you make in one sale $60,000 or $80,000
Right.
in a
Right.
sale. So for that same hour that the salesperson put in, they earn your annual salary.
Yes.
You
Yes.
put in 60, 70 hours a week or 40 hours a weekend. And so here was the example in the Bible that there is one guy worked for this business owner all day, and one came in the last hour and made what the one guy made the same as the guy that worked all day. And the guy who worked all day, he went to him and complained and say, well, listen, you paid him more, you paid him the same, and he only worked 1 hour. Well, he like, I hired you and I hired him. Is it not my company to do what I want? Well, the difference was you were an employee and he was a salesman.
Ah, got
He
it.
sold for me and you worked for me.
Right.
So what he get, where you labored to fill the barrels, he sold the barrels.
Exactly. Exactly. Because all the stuff that you do, if he don't go out there, I just got a stockpile of barrels that aren't making me $0.
Exactly. So I need a salesman, so I pay the salesman greater. So sales is actually, I think sales and communication trump even sports.
Oh, yes.
And,
oh, yes.
And the PhD as a doctor and lawyer and
Yes.
stuff. So the thing is that what keep us from doing the sales, number one, we haven't seen Michael Jordan in sales and LeBron
Right.
James in sales, and so we think it's not possible.
Right.
And so we're going after the sports, and we see very few Michael Jordans and LeBron James and doctors and lawyers that have a literal brick and mortar in our neighborhood. So we don't go after them. So what motivation have we to go in business for ourselves?
Yes. Well, it's funny that you raise the point of athletes, because that's something that I like to point out to people, is that Shaquille O'Neal, who, look, I'm not trying to knock the brother, but nobody's thinking of him and scholar in the same sentence usually. And what they don't know is that Shaquille O'Neal has a doctorate of finance, not an honorary doctorate, a legitimate one. And this came about because he was sitting early in his career, he's sitting at a table, and here's all his representatives, and here's these people negotiating whatever it was. And they're all talking about him and the money he's going to earn in investment as if he's not there at the table. And he's like, wait a minute, they talk about my money that I'm going to earn. He's like, oh, no, 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 this is going to stop. And what a lot of people don't realize is that between all of the franchises he owns, and you name a major thing, Taco Bell, whatever, he owns several of those franchises. And between the icy hot and the general insurance and all of these things, he makes so much money as a salesperson and a franchise owner that he doesn't have to touch his NBA money. And he made many millions in the NBA, and that is a little pocket change. That's just a little small nest egg because he understood exactly what you're saying. I'm only going to be able to play basketball for a certain amount of my life, but I'm not dead. Where's the real money? And he went to school and he learned how money worked, and then he put that knowledge to experience.
Well, you're exactly right. So now he learned the power of passive and residual.
Yes. How many times does he have to make an icy hot commercial?
Right. Warren Buffett.
Go ahead.
Warren Buffett was noted to make this statement. The number one rule is to never lose money.
Talk about it.
The number two rule is to remember rule number one. So let's qualify that statement. Warren Buffett, everyone knows that you're in the market. And everyone knows that the market giveth and the market taketh away. So how in your life could you say you never lose money? Everyone loses money in the market. You don't have a crystal ball greater than anyone else to tell you to make all the stops and all the picks that you never lose money. But here's what he's actually screaming in his statement. Warren Buffett is simply saying, if I have 100 billion, I don't put none of that 100 billion in the market. That 100 billion is probably earning me 200 million every month or 100 million every month. So whatever my gains on that 100 billion is, that's what I buy other companies with. So if those companies go out and I lose all that, I still got my 100 billion. So I'm never going to be broke another day in my life.
Right. That's mad money. That's mad money.
Exactly.
I don't speculate with my money. I speculate with some of my earnings.
Yes. And so our conditioning, where most people are being told, and we have these conversations, we have it with BMM, we have it to major advisors are telling people, and you talk to people and they're like, well, I got a financial advisor. All you just told me is that you have someone you're paying fees to risk losing all your money. That's all that means when you have a financial advisor. You're paying someone fees to risk losing all your money. Okay? You didn't know better. Where if all you have is in the market and you lose that, that's stinking thinking on steroids. That's ignorance gone to seed. When you could have a principal that never goes in the market, that's earning the static 3, 4, 5, or 6%, then outside of those, what it gains, you put that in the market. Now, we got people or argue you to your grave, oh, you should be in the market, it's going to yield you the highest rate of return, when in fact, the gross rate of return over the 10 to 12 years is 10 to 12%, they say, but the net rate of return, no one ever discusses that. And after taxes and fees are removed, here's your net, and that 10 to 12% is only 3 to 4%, and I could have been giving you that guarantee without the risk all along. Hello, Breaker. Come on.
Yes. Well, speaking of which, come on, good buddy. Let's talk about some of those financial instruments, because that's one of the things we talked about in our previous conversation, which is why I asked it, or urged, insisted, however you want to call it, that you be a guest here on the podcast today. So talk about some of those, particularly in the different types of insurance, the types of insurance that we tend to be advised to purchase versus the wise ones that we should actually be into. Let's talk about that.
Well, again, and I want to use this illustration again, and I thank you for that setup. Um, we learned, we read, growing up as a child, as a Christian, there was this static statement that Adam and Eve ate the apple, and so that was a fall of mankind because Adam ate the fruit. And so after a while, I finally grew up and read it. There's nothing in there about an apple.
Mm.
But I met a lady 30 to 40 years old that when I asked her, what fruit did Adam eat? She said an apple.
Mm.
So statistically, that's the normal way of thinking of what is right. But what was right is actually wrong. And it's hard to change people's mindset that it was never an apple.
Mm. Mm.
So that's my setup for you to understand that people have been told to buy term life insurance,
Right.
IUL, and invest the rest.
Okay.
Okay.
Now, before we go further, IUL, what does that acronym expand to?
Index Universal Life Insurance. And matter of fact, there's IUL, Index Universal Life Insurance. There is UL, Universal Life Insurance. There's VUL, Variable Universal Life Insurance, and then ISWL, Interest Sensitive Whole Life. But it's really still an IUL.
Right. Just different masks on the same face.
Yes, but what matters is how they work mathematically. The numbers don't lie, and that's the part where we're being raped and robbed statistically because we've gotten static information that we have believed to be right by FIA or FA, financial advisor.
Right.
So you need to know, hey, there's term life, there's IULs and ULs, there's PPWLs, participating permanent whole life. You need to know what participating is. And there is basic whole life and non-participating. If you don't know the difference that's like starting a journey on your GPS and saying you're going to end up in Texas, but you don't have the information in there correctly, and there's no way you can end up in Texas.
Right.
You really don't know what you got and know where you are. Is that making good sense?
Yes, definitely. So the buy term and invest the rest, obviously that's not the way to go. So what would you advise? Again, folks, this is not a financial advisement. That's not what we're doing here. We're just having a conversation. But in the context of a conversation, what would you recommend, shall we say, would be a wiser way to invest one's money in one's life?
Well, I'm going to tell you, there's another term, and I'm a person of faith above all things, using the scriptures, but not trying to manipulate someone's religious thoughts. But there is a passage in Deuteronomy 28:12 that thou shalt lend to many nations, not have to borrow. Why do I bring that up? Because no one ever showed them how to do it. Not in all my years of going, no preacher said, now let me show you how to do what this scripture says, how to actualize it so that you can become the lender, not the borrower.
Right.
The contradictory of buying term life insurance is term is a liability product.
Oh.
Meaning it is not an asset. There's no cash accumulation. It is a, listen to this, Cornell. It is a temporary solution for a guaranteed
for a permanent problem.
For a permanent problem. So you cannot, that right there is wrong. You cannot apply a temporary solution for a guaranteed event.
Yes.
Because the term is after that 10, 15, 20, or 30 years is over, all the money you put in, you didn't have access to it, is gone, and you have to start over if you qualify or if it would be offered later, and it is a greater chance that it may not be. And all the money you put in there is gone. So if you were telling someone to invest, buy a term and invest the rest, and they spent $40,000 and $80,000 between the husband and wife, and now that's gone and have nothing to show for it, make that make sense to me. How and why is that a good investment?
Well, I am at a loss to even try to make any sense of that at all.
You can't. Mathematically, scientifically, from a mathematical perspective, it is impossible because the money is gone and now you're past the years in which the premiums was low. But hey, they kept those premiums, they kept your money, and when the policy was issued on you, the companies knew there was a 99% chance you would outlive it, and they would keep the money.
Mm. So let me stop you right here. Let me stop you right here, because I am today years old, as the kids say, when I am realizing that basically you can buy let's say 20 years, a term insurance. I'm 64 right now.
Mm-hmm.
So you're saying that the expectation is that unless I die before I'm 84 years old, I will have invested my money for 20 years and get zilch, nada out of that.
Exactly. So as an investor, as you're trying to make a return on your money, when does that make logical sense mathematically?
It doesn't. And in fact, it sounds to me, just speaking not as an expert in the field, but as a guy who ain't got all that kind of money, that the insurance company is kind of, since they have, if nothing else, they've got the actuarial tables and they can put it in the charts and statistically figure out how long I'm expected to live. So they're betting on my outliving my term insurance.
Exactly. They're looking at you from a mortality perspective.
Right.
As for mortality, which simply says, just like when you were born, the doctor could tell when conception takes place, a doctor can tell exactly when you're going to be born. If they can pinpoint the time and the hour when conception took place, they can tell you to the day and the hour when your baby's going to be born. Yes?
Yeah.
So mortality suggests, based on your age, your height, your weight, and your medical condition, they can also really tell almost to the day when you're going to die.
Yeah.
And they got the factual data from the years of death that with medical conditions,
right,
they actually proved correct.
And if not like an absolute oracle, they can round it down to a pretty close enough for them that they know to sell you a term that's less than their expectation of your mortality.
Right. And so if you're from their perspective, if I get you to give me 30 to 40,000 and you multiply that times a billion people that are never going to really cash in on that, am I not wealthy and rich?
Yeah. It works out for you as the seller of the insurance.
Right. And so in the meantime, what the advisors are telling you to get that, because if you died early, that's the cheapest way for you to pay off the house, the car, and send your children to school with term. But on the back end, in the long run, that's not so smart.
No. And also, that's not life insurance. That's literally death insurance. That's you going to Las Vegas and betting high odds that you will die soon.
Well, the insurance company is betting that you're going to live long.
I'm saying from your perspective as the purchaser of the term insurance, term as opposed to some of the things that hopefully you'll recommend a little bit in our conversation, to buy that and to be sold, and that's like, okay, well, let's hope I die before the term runs out so my family's taken care of.
Exactly. So you need to die to actually get a benefit.
Yeah.
And you're trying. And last time I checked, you're trying to live as long as you can.
Yes.
So logically, you're buying it typically to cover risk that while you're earning your income and you're in debt, if you can't afford to pay off that debt and you die, yes, term fits. That's a great solution. That's the least expensive way that if you're $1 million in debt, you're earning $40,000 or $50,000, and you would die next year, your family can have $1 million to pay off the debt in that period if you have a catastrophic event, accident, or something like that. Then, hey, you can possibly win. But the tables show that really there's about an 80 to 90% chance that you're going to outlive that term policy.
Yeah.
So in terms of investing, if there's an 80 or 90% chance that you're going to lose every dollar you put in here, why would you do it?
Right. And you haven't reconciled that debt that might be hanging over your head.
Hello, breaking. So the next thing is whole life. Now, the financial advisors, and I shouldn't be telling you these secrets.
Too late.
So we have financial advisors, and they got their place, and they're legitimate. And I'm not saying that they're wicked in any form or fashion. But their argument is that, well, since you pay less in term and you would get a higher rate of return of 10 to 12%, and I want to hear you say growth.
Growth.
Gross. Gross.
All right, gross.
gross
earnings.
rate of return of 10 to
Right.
12% and not a net, it's smarter for you to put that in the market than in a whole life, an IUL or PPWL.
Right.
It's smarter because the IUL and PPWL may yield 3, 4, 5, and 6% when you're getting 12% growth on the market. But granted, you're in the market and you can risk losing it all. And then you got the
Yeah.
net return after you take out the cost and the fee. So they're convincing people not to buy whole life. If I knew better myself, I would have bought whole life from the very beginning
Ah,
and
okay.
not an IUL. Now let's look at those two. An
Okay.
IUL, and this is the complexity of it. People sold from the idea that their risk, their floor is zero, that the IUL has the indices that
Mm.
participate in the market, but without the risk of losing. So if the market crashed and you don't get any gains, your net cash accumulation in the policy or your cash accumulation in the policy is not taken away.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
So you say, hey, I get the benefits of the market without the markets crashing, and I can get additional interest and gain. Yes, when it does, but that's not guaranteed.
Ah, okay.
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 But here's the challenging secret to it. That's only what's talked about. What's not talked about is the surrender charges that when you first got that IUL, you got 10 years, 15 years, that if you wake up and your scales are moved off your eyes and you say, look, in the end, I know I can lose all this money in this policy due to several of the factors I'm about to explain to you. I want to take my money and run before you take my money and run, then you're locked in with that surrender period. And never, when you're going to hear this time and time again, when you talk to someone with talking about IULs, they're never going to mention that surrender charge.
Mm. This is the
What
first time
else
I'm
they're
ever
never,
hearing that term.
I should be taking a collection on this one. Uh, so here's the next thing that they're never going to tell you is that there are costs of insurance and administration fees.
Mm.
So basically, what that is that an IUL is typically another term life insurance policy that has whole life or cash accumulating benefit. But as a term, when a term policy ends, the premium that used to be $80 or $100 a month, whatever it was, now explodes to $1,000.
A
And so
month?
that's what, yes, a month. And people are not prepared for that. So in IUL, at that same age that it would be in a term, 20 or 30 years, the cost of insurance explodes to 1,000 to 2,000, and every year is going up. And if you had accumulated so much cash, unknowingly, in most cases, if people don't understand it, it will rape away the cash that you've accumulated until it's gone and you end up with no coverage. Largely sold in our school system to teachers. And the teachers, the
Mm.
reason why they buy it is because they under the umbrella of the school system and they trust the school system has thought it through and did what was best in their interest and brought secure, safe people in there, and they sell them IULs and they don't understand them. A lot of agents don't understand it. They'll argue back and forth. Oh, is it structured right? And I'm like, ninja, it ain't about the structuring on the top side. It's what's under the hood.
Right.
It's it's the mechanics that money's coming out. If the bottom line, if your premium is $100 a month, and in the beginning you're taking out 10 or 15 of that 100, I don't see so much as a problem because the other 80 or
85%. Yeah.
85% is going into my policy. But the next year you increase it, and each year you increase it to now my cost is as much as my premium, or my cost is greater than my premium. When
Mm.
my cost becomes greater than my premium, then my cash will be depleted. And if you're not awakened, the only way to offset that is that you max fund it. Well, they didn't tell you that max funding means paying a higher premium than you were used to. They sold you on the idea of the benefit that you can lower your premium, stop your premium, or increase it. But I'm going to tell you, if you have an IUL to rescue some of you people that have that, you better max fund it from the beginning, because when you get to 65 and 70, or between 7 and 8, it's going to rape away a maximum, because that's when the term component explodes and begin to take a lot of premium away. Cornell, I rescued just recently a pastor in South Florida,
Hmm.
and I put a video on LinkedIn and Facebook, and he had an IUL, and I had done a seminar at his church, and I asked him to let me look at it because he didn't attend the seminar. I said, let me meet with you and look at your policy. He said, okay,
Hmm.
this is what I got. I got an IUL. And after viewing it, I broke it down to him because I didn't sell it to him, explained everything that I explained to you. And here it was, he had close to $500,000. It had just taken out about 11 grand, which he didn't know. He had taken a loan, which is another problem. Taking a loan
Oh.
in an IUL is a catastrophe, because if you're taking a loan at 6 or 8% and you're being charged cost of insurance and administration fees, because he did that, he thought at 66, he was 66, at 77, he would retire and have that money. But because he took that loan and the cost of insurance and administration fees, I showed him at 73, all of his cash would be gone. And he
Hmm.
had $500,000 in there. Come on.
Hmm.
Is that like crazy on steroids? You're gonna lose $500,000, and by 73, what is that? 7 years. 7 years, all your money's gonna go, and you got $500,000. Why? Because you didn't understand how an IUL worked,
Right. And of
and they
course they're
told,
not going to explain this to you because they want to just, stick the straw in the juice box and drain it dry.
well, it's just popular. The insurance companies say sell it, and most of the agents don't understand it definitively how it works, and they're gonna sell on the language of the structuring stuff
Right.
and how it's participating with the market, but that's all fluff, smoke, and
Right,
mirrors.
right, right.
To the
And
back
again,
end,
as we discussed earlier, that's part of their training. They're trained to be a good employee and to read the script and to do the method the way it was told. They're not trained to be insightful. They're not trained to look inside or underneath. All they know is, look, I do it, I sell it, I get my cut, I put my money in the bank, and I'm good.
so I've been in the industries for 20 years, owning my own agency,
Hmm.
and God revealed to me, hey, listen, let me show you how this works, because you need to rescue people who are being misinformed and miseducated, and they're in and up. And so I've evaluated over 800 on policy. I would say about 98% of them were in a particular pickle where they're about to lose all their money.
Wow. Wow.
98% of them. So whether they were structured right or wrong, there was a few of them that were structured well, and at this point they were in a good place, and would be in a good place, because they never took that loan and the cost of
Okay.
insurance. So, but on the largest cases of it, don't put them on your children. And I find some people have done that too. Don't get those. Stay away. They're for business owners who are able to put heavy money in it up front. That's who
Right.
they're designed for. They're
Right.
not
Okay.
designed for the average
Okay.
family member,
Yeah.
the average Joe. They're designed for business and corporations who can dump a lot of money in it, which we call Coleys and Bowleys. Coleys is corporate-owned life insurance,
Okay.
and Bowleys is bank-owned life insurance.
Okay. Okay.
So they can jump a large premium there, and the rate of return is much faster and bigger in there, and they have a chance
Okay.
of survival.
Now, one of the things that we're told, or that I've heard about whole life insurance, is that it accumulates cash value, and you can leverage some of that for various purposes. But now what I'm hearing is if you take these loans, it can end up being very, very, very deleterious to your financial standings.
It can be very detrimental if it's um, if it's an IUL, UL, or VUL, because you got to know the difference.
Okay.
I tell a
Okay.
we haven't gotten to the PPWL.
Okay. Well, let's get to those.
Okay, so now we learn the bad habits of what's wrong with an IUL, and PPWL stands for participating. Now there are participating insurance companies and non-participating. What's the difference? No one explains. It's on the first page of your policy. But participating simply means the company shares part of its profit in return of premiums with the policy owner
Hmm.
on top of the interest. So if the
Hmm.
guaranteed interest is around 3%, and a lot of ULs is only 1 to 2%, the guaranteed interest is around 3.25%. And on top of that, the company says we're going to share a return of premium and some profit of the company with you on top of that. So the dividends over the years, like in 2008, the one company was paying like 6.5% in dividends, 3.25% in interest between 2008 and 2019. So when the market crashed and people was jumping out of windows and all the 401ks became 201ks or 001ks, the people who had it tax-free in a PPWL was still smiling. Hello, breaker.
Okay.
Because their cash was accumulating, never going low, always going high. And there's a static, simple interest loan that if you borrow from it, you don't have the perpetual cost of insurance coming out. If you borrow from it, as you pay it back, say 5%, you can pay interest only on the loan. And you can stretch it out longer. Let me make that make sense. Let me reel that in.
Please do. Please do. You at first you have my interest, now you have my attention.
So realistically, if you went out and took a loan on a car, right? To get a car, and it's $40,000. Typically, the average Joe is going to get that on what they call a compounded daily interest loan.
Ooh.
Now, Buffett said the most beautiful thing in America is compounded daily interest. Hello?
Yes.
Okay, take for one, he's right, because when you bought your house, you bought it for $300,000, but you signed a note saying you're going to pay $809 because of compounded daily interest.
Right.
Yes?
Right.
So when you borrow on a car, you're paying compounded daily. Then when you pay that $40,000 cost off in 5 years, you may have paid $55,000 to $60,000 for it. And the car may only be worth $5,000, and that $65,000 is gone. Am I right?
Right.
Okay. And along the way, while you were paying for it, it was a liability that if you missed 2 payments, they can recollect the car. Am I right or wrong?
Yes, absolutely correct.
Which is ignorance going to seed, but that's static, and that's what we've been learning to do always.
Yes.
Me, your children, and your children's children. But in a participating whole life, you have built up the cash. You borrow from that policy the $40,000 and pay cash for the car. So now you're not driving a liability, you're driving an asset that if you needed to roll and get money back out the car, you could get a loan against it because you paid cash for it.
So you own it outright.
You own it outright. You got the title to it, which is the way God told you to do it. I just threw that in there. That's for free.
No problem.
Oh, no man, nothing but to what? Love him. So you own the car outright, but here's the sweet spot. Now you're in a loan against your policy, which you own.
Okay.
And you're paying yourself back. And while you're paying yourself back, who's earning dividends and interest?
Oh, wait. I would be.
You would be. Will the insurance company earn interest at 5%? Yes. But you got your lock-in at the 3%, 3.25% that you're earning. And you got the dividends that the company is paying on top of that. So while you're paying yourself back that $40,000, you're earning interest and dividends. And so in 5 years, that $60,000 is in your cash accumulation. Shout yes.
Yes. Okay. So basically, go ahead.
Hold it. By the way, all along the time, you have a death benefit that's tax-free that should you have transitioned, your family receive money. If you borrow take a loan from a bank and you die, your family's not getting any extra money, tax-free.
No.
What was your question?
No, I was just going to say, so in essence, I would be taking out a loan from myself.
Yes.
As opposed to from a bank or some other lending institution.
Right. And tell me what you don't like about that.
Well, you hear me saying nothing because that's the answer.
So if you have that as an asset and the way the policy is structured in accumulation, it's a back-end loaded thing. So that the more you put in, the more it's going to accumulate in interest and dividends. More money makes more money. Isn't it not logical that if you end up where the dividends are now paying $45,000 a year, that's tax-free, and you got $500,000 in principal premium cash accumulation that you can say, hey, Glenn, this year, give me that 45,000 in dividend. I'm going to invest it in the market. And you did. And the market took that $45,000. Who knew it would? You still got a $500,000 in your policy. Are you mad at
Right.
me and going to shoot me because you still got a $500,000?
No, I don't think so. Because I
No.
mean, obviously the market could have gone up, but
Right.
as you said with your example of Warren Buffett earlier and how he does not lose, I'm not risking any of the $500,000
Hello,
in the
break.
market.
And that way you never lose money. And if the market did take it, you can afford to wait the next 10 years for the possibility that it will
Right.
come back. Because I bought
Right.
some Tesla stock when it was like 154 a share, and it went up to $800
Mm.
dollars a share, over $800 a share. And I sold it to leverage to buy a 1.3 million building, which I'm the landlord of it.
Gotta love that.
Yeah, and then now Tesla stock has been right around 254, dropped down to 212, and
Mm.
and then if you had borrowed, listen to this though, listen to this. If you had borrowed from that Tesla stock money like you can, right,
Right.
and it dropped below value, then you're gonna have a call where you got to immediately pay that money back.
Right. Right.
But in a PPWL, there ain't gonna be no call. There's not gonna be a market drop that's gonna affect it at all. And you have the option, rather than making like you would a normal car payment, you can just say this year I'm only gonna pay the interest only on that loan. And rather than locking yourself into a 5-year return or repayment of what you borrowed from yourself, you can stretch it out to 10 to 15 or 20. Hello, breaker, come on.
Okay, okay, okay. I like that, and this is some fascinating stuff. And I mean, Glenn, honestly, we're really just scratching the surface of it. I
Oh yeah.
thank you so much for joining us here. One of the things that I like, and I hope that the listeners out there understand, anyone who's been a regular listener to the Failure Guy podcast understands. I myself personally am an agnostic, but what I love in the conversation is that you reference the Bible, but not from a point of view of proselytizing or evangelizing, but you share with the people the fact that there is millennia old financial wisdom contained in these books. And a lot of people use these for the same type of programming and training to train people to be docile followers. But you're looking to it to empower yourself and your people and the generations afterwards, to the third and fourth generation, as many of the scriptures say, to find the wisdom that can be applicable. And a lot of people don't understand this because they think, well, money is the root of all evil, and that's not even what it says. It says that the love of money is the root of all evil because it
Exactly.
increases into traps and snares. And to do what it says is to be fruitful and multiply, is to go forth and prosper, and to do things in the proper way, because there is nothing wrong with profit. There is nothing wrong with benefit. There is nothing wrong with wealth, as long as that is not the lust of your heart. That is not the thing that motivates you. We want to have money so that we can do good in the world and do right. As I like to say, there's no such thing as a broke philanthropist. And a good friend of mine said, you have to do well in order to do good, you know?
Exactly.
And
Well,
and
the sweet spot is you can take a principle and a precept and apply it, and it's applicable, and create wealth and accumulation in your family, and no one's going to be mad at you, even if you're not a believer.
yes,
Uh,
amen.
so you can just take the principle and make money. There are wicked people who are using the same principle that are not a believer, but they've learned the principle and they're applying it. The math is the math, and the wisdom is the wisdom. You can't knock it when it.
Right, right.
You know what I'm saying? So our objective is
Exactly.
not to proselytize, but to make you understand how to have a healthy relationship with money, and how you can increase and create a generational wealth for your family without risking it all. Too many people are leaving no. I was reading an article the other day that the average African American leaves zero wealth to the next generation.
Yes. And in fact, sadly, like my mother who passed, left the debt for putting her into the ground.
Yes, and I'll put this out there. Many of the listeners, based on that point, need to Google this article that's written by the Policy Institute called Black Wealth 2053. It says the middle income Black Americans' wealth will go to zero by 2053. And here's why. we need to talk about that another time.
Okay, well, Glenn, this seems to be the precedent for season 3 here on the Failure Guide podcast. We're going to have to do a part 2 because we're really just getting started, and there's so much more that I know from our previous conversation offline that there is to discuss. We were just scratching the surface, and so much. I like to keep the episodes to around an hour. We're at the hour mark right now, but as soon as possible, you've got the link. Check the schedule. Let's get part 2 of this episode done because there's stuff I know you have to share that I want you to share with the Failure Guide podcast audience, and they've got to hear some of this stuff. So let's just say this is the conclusion of this episode of the Glenn Jones episode on the Failure Guide podcast. But Glenn will be back. And stay tuned, keep your ears pierced, and those who have ears, let them hear, as it says, and we'll be here. And as always, you folks out there, you know that the Failure Guy, failure stands for First Attempts in Learning Using Real Experience, and as always, remember, we are not in competition with anyone in our lives. Life is not a race or a competition. It is a journey that we take, and the only person we have to compare ourselves to is who we were the day before. So until then, folks, remember, keep running, never quit, and I'll be back next episode.